Hello, good afternoon, everyone. And thanks for coming so numerous to this event. I will be super quick because we are a bit constrained with time. We have lots of things to discuss. There's quite a lot of people, a lot of interest. We thought if there's more people coming, we're going to have to stack everybody. Okay, okay, that was a bad joke. I know, sorry. You know why we're here, so we'll be more elaborate on explaining what we mean by EuroStack, what people mean by EuroStack and digital and technological sovereignty. We have time to do this during the afternoon, but you also have come here to listen to our keynote speaker today, Executive Vice President Henna Virkkunen, Vice President for Technological Sovereignty, Security and Democracy of the European Commission. I will give you the floor in a second. I want to thank our co-organizers. So we are convening this meeting together with Bertelsmann. You will see Martin Hullin towards the end of the meeting taking the floor, and with the AI and Society Foundation, and Muriel also will say a few words later. With that said, my shortest speech ever for the people that know me, and I'll be back moderating the panel later. Executive Vice President, the floor is yours. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you so much, dear audience. It's a great pleasure to be here in this afternoon with you. And I want to really thank everybody who have been working with this EuroStack report and also who has been contributing to discussions before that and also in this afternoon, because I think it's very important work you are doing. And also I think the diversity of the stakeholders this is attracting really confirms the need also for this debate. We also see that we must unite to develop a European approach to digital technologies, reducing our dependencies and in critical sectors. And as you know, I have it also in my title, the technological sovereignty. And it's often asked also that what does it mean, the technological sovereignty? And I see that it's very important that in all the critical sectors we are building up our own capacities, that we are not too dependent on one country or one company when it comes to some important sectors and technologies. But it doesn't mean that we want to work alone. It means, of course, that in the same time when we are building up our own capacities, also it means that we want to work with the partners also together. But to make sure that we are not dependent. And this is also important that we have alternatives always when we speak about technologies. It's important for our security, as we know, but it's also important for innovations that we have a fair composition and also a market and level playing field for new innovations. So I think there's several benefits why it's important to also create alternatives and have also European options. From the European Commission side, when we started in December, one of our first decisions was to adopt competitiveness compass. It was adopted in January, and it's our roadmap now where we are also listing the actions we are taking to close the innovation gap and to foster also decarbonization and enhance our competitiveness. And it's our European Commission's response to Draghi, Letta and Niinistö reports, all stressing the need for urgent action in these areas when we speak about competitiveness and security. So we have already implemented ambitious initiatives to reinforce our strategic autonomy. And I would like to now list a few of the actions we have been taking during the last months when it comes to technological sovereignty. First of all, you all have recognized that we are now very much paying attention to artificial intelligence. And we want to make Europe an AI continent. And because of that, in last April, we adopted the AI Continent Action Plan. And enhancing our AI capabilities starts with AI data and also computing infrastructure. Based on our world-class network on Euro HPC supercomputers, the 13 full-scale AI factories we are now commissioning, they are essential to unlock the potential of AI across European Union. And these AI factories, they will enable our AI companies, in particular our startups and SMEs, but also our researchers, and also lay the foundation for pan-European innovation. Because we know that for our startups and for our researchers now the main obstacle is often that they don't have access to computing capacity. And that's why we are now investing heavily to our supercomputers to open up this computing capacity for our AI developers. But we are not stopping here, because we have also launched that we want to have 4 to 5 gigafactories in the European Union, and these are 4 times more powerful than the biggest AI factories. And this is really taking the concept of AI factories to the next level. So these AI gigafactories, they will power the next wave of frontier AI models in areas such as healthcare, robotics, and scientific discovery as well. The call for expression of interest, it was closing in last Friday about these gigafactories, and I can say that it was gathering really significant number of responses, exceeding our expectations. So it seems that there is a lot of interest to invest to these gigafactories. And this shows the very high momentum for AI across Europe, and especially for the AI gigafactories to ensure the EU's competitiveness and sovereignty as an AI continent. So this was not the official call yet, what we had now. So now we will continue to work with those who were expressing their interest, and we will have official call later in autumn. But it seems that there's huge interest. But of course, infrastructure, when we speak about AI, it's only beginning. The data union strategy to come later in this year will also ensure access to high quality public and private data, fuel for our AI ecosystem. Today we know that only, or this was in last year's figures, now I hope it has been increased, but we don't have the latest figure now, but in last year it was a little bit more than 13% of the European businesses who were using AI. So it's a very low number, only 13%. So now we are also identifying that where are the obstacles, how we can support our industries and public sector SMEs also to uptake AI and use all the benefits. And with the Apply AI strategy, powered by our AI factories and digital innovation hubs, we will accelerate now the adoption across vital sectors to make every factory and hospital and also public service smarter in the future. And of course, this grand vision demands talent. While nurturing the next generation of European AI experts, we will also launch initiatives to attract AI experts worldwide to European Union. So AI is something that we are now working in a very intensive manner. But then also in parallel, we are now preparing our Cloud and AI Development Act. And of course, this is a very important part of our sovereignty. It will triple Europe's data center capacity over the next 5-7 years with a clear focus on sustainability, because we know that also these infrastructures, they are very energy consuming, and we are looking at the best technologies here. And we are also working on improving opportunities for an EU cloud offer, notably for sovereign services, for the public sector whose purchasing power we should leverage much more strategic way. We know that in the same time, when we want to build up our own capacities, European market has been always very open for businesses and innovations, and we see also in the future that we can't achieve our objectives by building a wall around the European Union. But we can enhance the visibility of European solutions, and I think this is also something that EuroStack is very much promoting, because we need to identify areas of high criticality that deserve our support to develop European alternatives, for example, through a strategic use of the public procurement. I see that we should use this instrument much more actively. And I think it's also often much better for our industries or SMEs or startups that we are buying services from them than we are giving funding for them. Because when we are buying services from our startups, from our SMEs, then they have customer already, and they have also great incentive to finalize their product when someone is buying it. So I think we should use this opportunity much more actively. And of course, another critical area when we speak about technological sovereignty, European alternatives, it's about semiconductors, because we know that there's not digital without chips. And the industry relies on global, very highly interconnected supply chains nowadays. But also the geopolitical shifts, they have exposed many vulnerabilities, and Europe can't no longer take for granted our access to semiconductors in all circumstances. So the European Chips Act responded in 2021 chips crisis, when shortages brought entire production lines to a halt. It was during the COVID pandemic. And when also dependencies in other parts of the world, they become increasingly evident. So far, because of our CHIPS Act, 80 billion euro of investment have been announced in the European Union, with many already underway to increase our production capacity. But yet, challenges also remain. We are now preparing already a CHIPS Act 2 to address areas uncovered in the first CHIPS Act, such as, example, designing and producing AI chips, advancing photonics and also quantum chips or energy efficient chips architectures. And then fourth very important area we are working now in very intensive manner is quantum technologies. And this is a field where European Union and European countries, our startups, researchers, they are very strong. It's one of the most transformative frontiers ahead of us, as we know. And quantum is something that is not longer a theoretical prospect. The global race for quantum leadership is really real. And Europe must make sure that we are having our place not only as a customer, but a creator in this sector. Our European Quantum Communication Infrastructure Initiative and also the deployment of 10 quantum computers and simulators in our HPC centers across Europe, they are testament to this commitment. And this will ensure secure communications across European Union. But now we are finalizing also our Quantum Europe strategy, and we will publish it on next week. And it aims to make Europe a global leader in quantum also in the future. And it will drive industrial deployment, accelerate research and innovation, and build also a very strong and secure quantum ecosystem. So this is something that we see that Europe is already very, very strong, and we have to make sure that we are keeping up to good pace and also that we are pooling really our expertise and resources in this crucial sector. And finally, I would like to, I take a good note of your support for openness and digital commons and open source. Because when we speak about open source, we know that it's providing greater control over digital infrastructure and also enhances our digital sovereignty. And many open services and platforms offer genuine alternatives. So we need a pan-European coordination to make this a real competitive offer. Open source, supported by active communities, is a European strength. But it requires investments in developer support, also software testing and long-term sustainability. And this is why we are launching the Open Internet Stack initiative to leverage the communities in relation to internet technologies. It will deliver curated, interoperable, open source building blocks for trust, digital identities, transactions, cybersecurity, connectivity, decentralized platforms, and also interoperability. The challenge is now to work together, public and private sector here, to advance our common agenda on tech sovereignty. I'm very supportive of grassroots and industry initiatives in this sector. The private sector has a key, and it's a key in our digital success, as we know. We must move away from relying solely on non-EU providers when we speak about technologies. So that's why the EuroStack movement is already helping to change mentalities. But I think, and I'm sure we all agree that it's not enough that we are just changing mentalities. We need to prove also that European tech is good and actually often can be also much better than the big tech. But now we need to invest and we need people to also buy European. And this requires determination and not will happen, of course, overnight. But it's important that we have raised awareness and we are also giving visibility to these alternatives we already have. I see it's super important for our security, but also for our innovations. We know that EU has capabilities across the entire tech stack. Materials, chips, telecoms, clouds, applications, but we need to make it known and also identify the relevant EU companies, including our SMEs. As a part of our Cloud and AI Development Act and with the Open Internet Stack, we want to build a complete catalogue of European solutions. They could then be subject to assessment so that companies that meet certain criteria could get a quality label, for instance, or be part of list of trusted and sovereign cloud providers. But we know that no country or region can take the advances of the digital and AI revolution in isolation. So that's why we as the European Commission in our new international digital strategy, we also noted that for the EU's competitiveness, economic security and defense capacity is crucial to very closely cooperate with our partners and tech allies. And of course, it's super important also for our technologies and companies in the European Union. To engage with a broader set of partners and foster the competitiveness of our ecosystem, the EU intends to come with a comprehensive tech business offer to our partner countries. So based on Team Europe approach involving our EU companies and also our innovators, we will support the deployment of secure and trusted connectivity in our partner countries, as well as digital public infrastructure, AI and software solutions, and also beyond. I also want to refer to the cooperation with USA. American tech companies, they have greatly contributed to our digital transition. This is why the EU has been always very open to USA tech products and services. And in fact, for many US tech companies, the EU, with our 450 million people, is the biggest foreign market. And for many of them, this is actually the biggest market. Going further, the EU is willing to maintain very pragmatic engagement and close partnership with the USA. But in the same time, we will defend and promote, of course, our interests and values to continue implementing also our EU legislation. And with regards to UK, we held the first post-Brexit summit now in May with very positive and ambitious results. And based on this, and in light of the participation of UK in relevant EU programs, such as Horizon Europe and Copernicus, or the EU's joint undertakings for semiconductors and supercomputers, we are confident that we can build mutually beneficial cooperation in the field of digital also with UK. And of course, currently we have very good digital partnerships with many countries like Japan, Korea, Singapore, Canada, India, and more is to come. Because we see that this is very important for our development, but also for our businesses, that we can work together globally. So to conclude, I would like to propose that we set to ourselves some achievable goals for the end of this year. And on my side, I plan to deliver several initiatives to this direction to make sure that we can build up our technological sovereignty, and we will boost innovations and also European alternatives. But of course, it's also very important all the time to get the feedback from the industrial side also, what they can do. And it's important also that with EuroStack, that we will continue our good cooperation, because I think the work you are doing, all the stakeholders, you are gathering the ideas, they are very much benefiting our European project. So I want to thank you very much for all your efforts and for your initiative, and let's make tech sovereignty not only a dream, but also a reality.
Thank you very much. I think these were very encouraging words for many of the things that we will try to do also for the remainder of the afternoon, and that many of you have tried to achieve over the past months and weeks. We will today, since we know that the Executive Vice President will have to leave shortly, I announced today we will announce a network dedicated to digital sovereignty. Martin will give us a little bit the first coordinates of that. They will be very inclusive of all the many voices and streams of work that have emerged over the past couple of years. The catalog is actually something that the Digital SME Alliance will contribute also to this broader initiative. And yesterday there was already a big announcement about this. So we actually try to do a little bit of the heavy lifting and the work, and also the reflection on what kind of goals are achievable, how to get there, and be very concrete, pragmatic, but at the same time sufficiently visionary in terms of being ambitious for our continent, which I think is very important. We also have a little bit of an ego massage to give ourselves in terms of the many solutions that we can develop and we can continue to implement, not necessarily in a closed way, but in a constructively open way in the coming months and years. So count on us, all of this community. I've been in touch, we have been in touch with many of you over the past days. days, we are determined to make this really a reality, as you evoked at the end of your speech. So thank you very much. And we know you will have to leave because it's as I don't know which day is not crazy, but you know, it is a crazy day as far as I know in terms of your agenda. But we will move on with our program, and we will discuss also in the panel how to concretely achieve some of the goals that you have set also for ourselves in your speech. So thank you very much. We're very grateful for your presence today. Thank you. And bye, Benjamin. Yeah. So I see that there's people in the back of the room, and there's a couple of seats that we can promise to people that are fast enough to come and sit here. I don't know if people here, please don't be selfish. If you have like, there's one seat perhaps over there. There's a couple of seats of people you're going to listen to. It's not a classical music concert, but I've been being sitting is anyway better than, yeah, I will actually, since there's a few more people in the seats, this will mean that our panelists later, I will actually leave them here as Muriel and Martin take the floor, so we save another 5 seats here. All right, that said, it's time to listen to our second keynote, because the European Commission has been very active on technological sovereignty, but not only the European Commission. The European Parliament has gone through very, very articulate work and reflection on this topic. And the ITRE committee in particular has worked on an own initiative report that now we'll see a plenary vote in a, well, you tell me when, sometime in July probably. And in our opinion only, but I think not only in our opinion, the most active, one of the most active members of parliament in that respect has been Alexandra Geese. So we invited Alexandra to, I call you Alessandra in Italian because we only speak, we speak in Italian when we speak, the two of us, Alexandra. And Alexandra's been so kind to come to visit us and tell us a little bit about this very, very important report that is taking shape inside of the European Parliament. It gives us, on top of what you will hear in the panel later, all the situational awareness that we need to understand what is happening at the political level, at least in Brussels, and then how to make sure that we contribute to the best, in the best possible way. So, Alexandra, I'm going to give you the floor for your reflections, and I thank you very much for coming to visit CEPS today.
Distinguished guests, thanks a lot for having me today. I wanted to start the speech saying Executive Vice President for Technological Sovereignty, but unfortunately she had to leave. But I think also the fact that she came and gave this keynote speech and mentioned EuroStack several times shows the success of this movement, as she said. And I love this term that she used, the movement, because I think it's a movement. And I would like to thank CEPS for organizing this. I would like to thank one person who has been absolutely instrumental from the first night we discussed it, and who has actually coined the term, also the name, and that is Francesca Bria, for all her work. It's been amazing. And I would like to thank Bertelsmann Stiftung for supporting it and giving her the space to do this. That is extremely important, that we have people outside Parliament and outside the Commission who can do the thinking on this, and really the conceptual work that was absolutely instrumental to bring the EuroStack movement and concept forward from the first ideas we had. So 20th of September was the kickoff conference in the European Parliament. Looking back now, a few months later, not even a year later, I think the success is absolutely amazing. This is the full room. Every time I'm invited to speak about it, the room is full, the people are standing. The response of industry has been absolutely overwhelming. The support from the European digital and not digital industry has been really, really impressive. And that was the 20th of September at the time, so that was before the US election when we came up with this idea, with this concept, we started working. Then we all know what happened at the US elections, and we all saw the pictures of President Trump's inauguration with the tech CEOs standing behind him and then sitting in the first row in front of his cabinet. And we have heard the threats that the US administration has directed to Europe. So we shouldn't be enforcing our digital regulation. We shouldn't be thinking about digital taxes. And we shouldn't be fining companies who violate our legislation. So I think this has given another push to the project. Nobody wants decoupling. I personally go to the US very regularly. I have very good friends. But we need to be able to speak to partners and hopefully soon again friends eye to eye. And this is the ambition that stays, and this is what we are working on. And if we want to keep our democracy in the future, and we know how many CEOs in Silicon Valley and funders have spoken about democracy as something that they don't see as a positive vision for society anymore and not compatible with freedom anymore. We have heard J.D. Vance's remarks, then we know how urgent this is. But this is not only about democracy, this is a lot about competitiveness, and that's something that the European Parliament and the Commission care about a lot, that they are focusing on a lot. And it's important that the European industry understands that there's no competitiveness for any kind of industry if we are not able to design, understand, and control the digital solution our whole life and how our whole economy runs on. And I think this is particularly important to keep in mind in the framework of the current negotiations on trade and on tariffs. And you all know that there's been this rumor hovering around in Brussels in the past days that the Commission might give in a little bit on the enforcement of the DMA. I really hope that this is not true. But it's really important to understand that if we give in on digital, we will lose everything. And I think there is a space to work with the US. I spoke to former US officials yesterday, high level, and say, we want to see Europe building. We want to see strong European companies. We can be strong together. And this is what we are trying to do. So in the 20th of September, there were a lot of academia, a lot of industry in the room. I was one of the politicians already. The conference was organized by 5 pro-European democratic parties. I'm from the Greens. There was EPP in the room, S&D, Renew, and the Left. And my suggestion was, what can the Parliament do? Let's do an own initiative report on technological sovereignty in the Industry Committee, Committee for Industry and Research, which is competent. And this is what we did. It was 4 political groups who worked intensively on this report. The work started around November, December. And we voted with a large majority the 3rd of June of this year, so a few weeks ago, and it will go to plenary probably in September. It's not clear exactly. There's some procedural hiccups, but it is very clear that there's a very strong majority of the committee, a very strong majority of the Parliament. We have had other parliamentary debates where this topic has come up, and there have always been really like a dozen of speakers saying we need technological sovereignty. So there's a very, very strong call. So what does the report actually focus on? One of the most important points is public procurement, because we should use public procurement strategically. In Europe, we often hear, yeah, but the American companies, they are so strong because they don't have regulation. And that is not true, because they grew, they became so big and strong before there was any regulation in the US or in Europe. What really made them strong was public procurement, was the US government trusting them and handing out a lot of money for them to work. And this is really a key instrument that we also have in Europe. If our public administration starts buying European digital solutions, European digital products and services, that is a huge cash flow going to European industry. And this is also what the report says, because we know we have the talent, we have the know-how, we have the companies. All these companies need in this moment is demand. And this is what they're asking. If you go to a German cloud company or to a French cloud company, they say, we don't want funding, we want demand. And often the tenders by the public administration are written in a way that they say, well, I already know this is going to Amazon, this one is going to Google, because they already put provisions in that would shut European providers out. So this is really one important instrument to say when a European administration, a public administration, has the possibility to give to write the tender in a way that a European company can significantly compete. And then they are most probably will be more successful because only European cloud companies can make sure that data really stays in Europe and no other jurisdiction, for example, the US government, has access to it. That's the legal situation we have. So they will be successful. So public administration, public procurement is an absolutely key aspect of this report. There's also the recast of the Public Procurement Directive that will come up in Parliament probably next year. So that is the place that we can actually implement that. Because this report I'm speaking about is an own initiative report of the Parliament. For those of you who are not particularly familiar with parliamentary procedures, it's basically what the European Parliament does when it says, well, we have an opinion about a thing and we want the Commission to work on this. That doesn't mean that the Commission has to come up with a legal framework for European digital sovereignty or technological sovereignty, but it does mean it should incorporate all these ideas that we are expressing in the legislation that is coming up, that is already planned, and public procurement is one of them, and that is why it's so important. A second important point is independent clouds, sovereign clouds. That is extremely important. We know that the cloud infrastructure is probably the most important factor in, because that is not only where our data is stored, it is where it's processed. It is where everything happens. When we speak about artificial intelligence, what are we speaking about? We're speaking about data centers which are processing data. This is the place where it physically happens. Right now, 70% of the European cloud market are controlled by US companies who, as I said before, cannot guarantee that the US government doesn't have access. They just can't because they're companies under American jurisdiction. So this is, in my view and in the view of the Parliament, really a strategic area. And what we call for is to propose for the Commission to propose a definition for a sovereign cloud in the planned Cloud and AI Development Act. Because what we are seeing now is that the US cloud giants are heavily engaging in the European space to say, well, we provide a European cloud. We provide a sovereign cloud with different technological and legal solutions, but which in our view don't hold up. In the case of a serious crisis, we have no enforcement over this, we have no oversight, we can't control what's going on, and the US legal framework does not really allow that. And I don't think that this US Congress is going to change that, frankly. So this is really the area where we need to focus in making our cloud companies stronger, bigger. All they need is a steady flow of demand to give them the safety to be able to invest themselves and to direct money from private investor, from the private capital in these investments. Everybody knows that data centers are a good investment in this moment. The question is just who's funding them, who's building them, who's running the data. And we think those should be European companies, especially if this is data that public administrations store, very private data of citizens. Think of the pension insurance companies' data, the public pensions. Think health data, think defense data, think critical infrastructure. All this data needs to be protected, and that means in the current legal framework, it needs to be stored and held and controlled by European companies. Thank you. We have a point on AI development. The compromise supports the AI Gigafactory that the Executive Vice President just illustrated. I know that there's a little bit of debate around them. And also public-private partnership to boost Europe's share of global AI investment that currently stands at 7%, which is too low, and I think we need to do something about that. The report stays a little bit general. I think personally what we should do is really pursue also forms of artificial intelligence, large language models that really serve the interest of our citizens, that are accurate, that are precise, and that guarantee the access to knowledge and to facts. I'm personally very, very concerned. This is not in our report, this is just a personal remark that I would like to make. If you see the very targeted Russian disinformation campaigns that try to train large language models and AI chatbots very deliberately with disinformation, for example, on the war between Russia and Ukraine, when you see that the accuracy of new releases is worsening actually because they're already trained on internet content that is not accurate anymore, I have very big concerns that we will have difficulties really in accessing facts, factual facts in the future. So I think this is really where Europe should invest. We have great universities. We have really great tradition of knowledge. The Commission President von der Leyen has launched this, this really strong call to take in academics from the US and other parts of the world who want to work freely in an area where academic freedom is guaranteed. And I think this is a little bit part of it. Europe as the continent of facts, of knowledge, of freedom around this. And this is why we need European artificial intelligence and large language model to guarantee this. Another important point in the Parliament's report is digital public infrastructure. This is an area where the Commission has already been quite active. The digital wallet, for example, the whole discourse around the digital Europe. So this is an effort we support, but what the report clearly says, it's not only about the application layer, but we do need the physical infrastructure, so the data center, the connectivity. Connectivity is another important point that we mentioned, but there's a specific piece of legislation, the Digital Networks Act, coming up soon in the European Parliament by the Commission, so we didn't dwell so much on this point. And then open source and open standards, that's a very important point. The industry and academia are telling us we can do this networking in Europe. We don't want the big one European Google or Amazon, we want a network, a federation of companies, of other forms of organization of this work that who can work together. The basis for this is open standards. And therefore, the compromise embraces open sourced first and the concept of public funds, public code principles to prevent vendor lock and stimulate innovation. And we believe that open source can help to do this. The last point is funding. The compromise focuses on scaling up public-private investment instruments like venture capital and creating dedicated funding tools for startups in critical tech sectors, with the ultimate goal of making private capital the main driver of Europe's digital transformation. And the next multi-annual financial framework, so the 7-year budget of the European Union, should earmark funding for sovereign digital technologies. So I think this is a very good report that I was extremely happy to have initiated and to support it. I think we could also have done a little more. I do think we need some public funding in several areas. Often companies are saying, well, we are doing our part, but we do need some help on the infrastructure in several areas. We can't let the infrastructure be completely privatized by huge companies who have basically infinite capital, and I think that Europe has to make a choice. It's my personal opinion and the opinion of the progressive parties in the European Parliament, that Europe has to make choices where we really need public funding. Think of chips industry, certainly we need some help. Certainly some areas of connectivity, the whole issue of maintenance of open source, I think needs to be solved, and there's certainly other areas that Francesca can illustrate. But we do need to think as a European Union whether we want to make a common effort on public funding. I would have liked to see a little bit more open source in the report, something on data commons, the way we handle data. I think data commons would be an extremely important instrument. But I'm very confident that this is just the start of the work. It's an extremely promising start. And we will go on. I suggested, in the committees we can do hearings on different topics, and I suggested to have a hearing in the industry committee on technological sovereignty in order to share this knowledge and these positions and debate this and see some of the players in the space in the whole industry committee, which is an important committee of the European Parliament. I was just told this morning that the coordinators decided that the 17th of July, we will have a hearing in the industry committee. And I'm very confident that we soon also have a plenary debate on this. So I believe we have in Europe, we have the talent, we have the knowledge, we have the companies, we have great academia on this. We do have the capital, we just need to make sure to redirect it to European and digital investment. All we need is the political will. The Parliament has started to express that political will, and I hope the Commission will follow. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Very rich expose of what is in this report, and also additional ideas and food for thought that I hope our panelists will pick up on when I certainly will provoke them on this. And then, of course, Alexandra, I know you can stay with us for a little longer. And so once you hear, and if you want to intervene in the conversation rather than collecting now Q&As, because we have a packed agenda, happy to give you the floor whenever you want to react. Also because I'm going to ask our panelists to comment on what you said, so you deserve the right to to comment further. So I will now invite 5 panelists on the stage, and so I'll keep this chair for me, so please don't steal it. Also, no chairs left in the audience. And the first one was already evoked. It's going to be Francesca Bria. Francesca needs very little introduction, and she normally has several hats, but certainly fellow Stiftung Mercator and professor at the University College London Institute for Innovation and Public Purpose. Francesca, welcome to take the floor. You get to pick the chair that you prefer, also the color. There's only 2 colors next to me. Okay. And as most people know, Francesca has been one of the lead authors also of this EuroStack report that we published a few weeks ago and convened by and sponsored by Bertelsmann, but also with UCL, Institute of Innovation and Public Purpose, and Stiftung Mercator, and published also by, in many parts, but also many sites, but also on the CEPS website. Second speaker, Paul Timmers, another of the authors, very well-known expert. Paul, even longer list of affiliations, but you pick the chair that you prefer. Basically, visiting adjunct chair, mega director, guru in a number of institutions. Among them, EV, which you are the CEO, and formerly also a director in the European Commission. Right. Sebastiano Tofaletti, please take the floor. Sebastiano is the Secretary General and CEO of the Digital SME Alliance, and has been will tell us something about this famous catalog. It's trying to look into what actual concrete solutions we can collect and make visible to the ones that are looking for those solutions on the market, and also incorporating in the future as much as possible the information about the European solutions at various layers of the stack that are available. So we will chat with Sebastiano about this. Jakob Greiner from Deutsche Telekom is Vice President of European Affairs, Public and Regulatory Affairs. So Jakob, the Digital Networks Act has been evoked already by Alexandra. What is the position of Deutsche Telekom and telecom companies more generally when facing the prospects of a European technology stack, or a more European technology stack? And finally, Pascal Belmont, Vice President for EU Aviation and Regulatory Affairs at Airbus. And so will give us also a different industry perspective. So we have some of the intellectual leaders of this movement, Francesca and Paul, but we also have a diverse representation from industry with small and medium-sized enterprises represented by Sebastiano, but also larger industry players from 2 different angles and domains. I'm coming next to you, Francesca, because you go first. And I think we heard quite a lot from the Vice President Virkkunen and from Alexandra. You and all the other panelists have the additional task of telling us how can we actually realize this vision, and whether the things that you've seen, including how Alexandra was saying, you know, the things that you've seen from September till today, are encouraging in your opinion, and whether we need to shift gear at this stage. So, floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay, on. That's on. Hi, everyone. Good to be in Brussels in a sunny day. Joke. So I thank you very much for organizing this. I think is very timely all the time when we talk about this topic. But I think, in my view, this is a now or never moment for Europe. I always say this. I think the enthusiasm, the participation, and also the commitment that I see now, and I've been engaging on this topic with digital sovereignty, technological sovereignty on the ground at different levels for many years, too many years. The commitment and also, I think, you know, much more focus that I see now, it's a new thing for Europe. And I think this is the good news. And usually I don't start with the good news. This time I want to start with the good news because usually I get to start with the diagnosis. Why did you write the report? What's the story of the report? And if you look at the data, the situation is not very good at all. And that's why we are calling for urgency and action. But I want to start with the good things first, because I think the good things is what we have heard before. Both in the words of the Commission, because obviously the Commission really welcomes this, I think. You know, on one side, because this is not just a top-down policy exercise. This actually, I mean, in my view, and what I would like to hear from the room today is industrial leadership. I think that's what we need now. We need to build European solutions. We need to scale European solutions. We need to drive adoptions of European products in the market at scale. We need a lot of people to adopt these solutions. So this is now the time for industrial leadership. And I think, you know, that's what the Commission somehow says, that yes, there is a part that's about policy and regulation, and I think Europe has been focused on that a lot in the last 5 years. And we have seen, as Alexandra Geese was saying before, the good sides, what Europe can do to regulate, to foster innovation and align innovation with European values, with democracy and industrial competitiveness. But I think we also see the limitations. You basically, especially in today's geo-economic environment, where we see, you know, export controls on chips, where we see bans on critical rare earth material that are very important for the stack to build all the technologies that we need. When we see, you know, sabotages to undersea cables, when we see that the running of a satellite network can determine the outcome of a war, we are in a different situation. And I think we cannot just regulate what we don't control, and we cannot also defend what we don't own and control. And I think that's the point, that basically now we need to go a step further, not only regulate, but innovate in Europe's terms. So this is, you know, the key message of our report. I think what Alexandra has told us from the Parliament is also very good. I mean, I think that everyone in the room would say, we agree. I mean, at least I can certainly say, but I also then will be curious to hear from the industry, but I think we are in line with what the Parliament is saying, and we want to see that implemented, yes? But I think possibly exactly there, I will focus on what are the missing points. I also maybe want to say, actually, that the other good news is that the sovereignty has become so popular. I mean, basically, I have to see it as a victory point. I think we have to revindicate it as a victory. So European sovereignty as at the very core of the European agenda, technological sovereignty. Even that there is no big tech products nowadays that's not branded as sovereign. So we have Google Sovereign Cloud, we have sovereign AI from NVIDIA, we have sovereign military from Palantir, so we have sovereignty. So obviously the point there is that here we are about building that sovereignty, which means building the capacity, the capability, the industrial leadership in order to make this sovereignty real. So it's not sovereignty washing, it's actual sovereignty. Yes, so the good thing is also that this is a broad thing. I think we are all surprised that we started backed by a large coalition in the parliament, 200 industries, small and big, also some of the key European industries signed the letter, backed this initiative. We have at least 3 or 4 key member states in Europe which have, I mean, Germany has the EuroStack in the coalition agreement in the actual program of the government with a new ministry dedicated to its implementation. We have seen President Macron and the minister in France backing this agenda very clearly. We have seen Spain being really rally behind this and actually being very, very ready to take part in the AI factories and many initiatives that the Commission put forward. And I think very importantly, the Danish presidency has made very clear that technological sovereignty and competitiveness is very central to this 6 months of presidency. So we do have a window here. And I want to also mention the network of research and innovation, because I mean, this is a very important part. So there is the industry, the member states, the Commission, the Parliament, but we have an incredible research and innovation networks, and some of the main initiatives are working with us on this. So I think it's broad, and this is also a thing that we have to celebrate. So now, where are the gaps? Yeah, I want to say, in my view, where I think the focus should go quickly, yes. So the first thing is the concentration of power is extreme. This is why we've done the report, actually, to say that the stack matters. So we have looked, and this is a little bit like economics of digital strategic autonomy. And that's why we have put actually the stack in an integrated way, because the game is changing. I mean, now the game is about controlling the stack from the ground up until the application layer, which is the AI application. From, you know, from the data centers in a box, critical raw materials, proprietary chips, proprietary cloud, AI that runs all across, and basically the value it's captured, large scale, big time. So value capturing is what Europe has to understand. Basically, we want to capture the value of the digital transition and digital revolution here in Europe, which means, you know, with our industrial ecosystem, and the ecosystem needs to be created, but the stack, I think, matters, and that's the first thing. And in order to basically deal with this concentration of power, we have to do, obviously, something that's not only regulatory, because I think it's also about competing, competing and accelerating innovation. The second point that I want to make is the industrial, this is actually what we are proposing in the report, a forward-looking industrial policy for Europe. So this looks at digital as a central piece, a central part of a proactive, forward-looking industrial policy, which means, for example, first of all, yes, you need to align critical infrastructure. Yes, we think critical infrastructure matter. They have to be in European hands. Part of it, maybe some parts, and that's a little bit the industry lead that has to come. Which part, which is more vulnerable, what do we need to own and how? But I think also, for example, if we are deploying gigafactories all across Europe, we need an industrial plan for those gigafactories, because part of the infrastructure may be European, partly not. We know we don't have the capabilities at the moment, but certainly we want to have key industry players, you know, developing the applications that our industry needs and that our society needs. And this is an industrial plan, because basically you want to develop this application in the sectors where Europe is strong, being that bioproduct, biotech, you know, airspace, defense, mobility, whatever that is. Now I don't want to, you know, whatever that is. but that's where European robotics, yes, advanced robotics, that's where European strength is, and this is an industrial policy. And that's why here we want to see then, you know, what is the gap, and I get to the final point, which I care a lot, because basically a lot of people say, but you are not, I mean, you don't have a lot of this time. I mean, I already see this debate coming versus sovereignty versus urgency, but we have to build now, you know, now we have to spend 800 billion in defense right now, we need to do right now, we don't have the capabilities. The capabilities we have to build, but also in our plan, that's why we're identifying highly scalable products. Yes, because while you're building critical parts of the infrastructure, maybe capabilities that we don't have and we're gonna build it, at the same time you scale up the products. And that's, you know, scaling up the products in the market is a very important part of the industrial plan. And I get to my final point, sorry, Andrea, the investment gap is real. Because also there, and this is President Draghi, we go exactly with President Draghi, you know, estimates here. And I mean, it's the same, basically, numbers, but it's real. And it's real because, and you don't only need to look at Stargate, 500 billion investment, digital Silk Road. Don't look at the big, you know, China versus US. Look at the Emirates. Look what Saudi Arabia is doing. Look what India is doing. Look what Brazil is doing. Look what South Korea is doing. Look what Singapore is doing. Now, Europe, you know, has to compete. At least, you know, we have to be there, you know, creating this. And we need to step up. And I think that the question is not public-private. Europe does it always, public and private. Public and private. Because obviously, if the public invests, the leverage, you know, needs to be private investment. And this is all with all the instruments. And I use, sorry, I really finished.
No,
I used to be the president of the Italian National Innovation Fund. So I work a lot on VC scale up. I think that can be a part of like scaling up a deep tech growth fund or whatever the industry is calling for. But this is not going to be not enough if we do not anchor it in European sovereignty and sovereign capabilities, because 30% of the startups and scale-up we are funding here get their exit abroad, and they get bought by big foreign investors and VC fund of big tech. So we need to fix that if we want to create capabilities and the ability to compete industrially, defend Europe, and defend the democracy in Europe.
Thank you, Francesca, and thanks for the intervention. Okay. No, I'm sure you. I acknowledge the fact that you condensed your speech, but still, we have limited time. Meaning, in 1 hour, we'll have wrapped up the event. So, and then there's people that are waiting. So we will ask everybody to condense in a different way. Anyway, so no, thank you very much, Francesca. I think it's very clear. I will give Paul now the floor to complement, perhaps also in terms of some of the things that Francesca evoked in terms of how to give more directionality, also setting targets, and perhaps how to conceive of something that we increasingly see as a very complicated task, but a much needed one, which is how do we build an industrial policy that is really trying to achieve so many goals at once and achieves the synergies that so far, I would say we haven't really been able to see in practice on the ground. So Paul, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Francesca. You're really the best. Yeah, works. Okay, you are really the best spokesperson for EuroStack, and I think I really admire the way you bring the arguments very clearly and convincingly. Let me build on that, as we have been building together this whole kind of analysis, and make a few points. It's great to think actually about these issues of sovereignty, and we have been thinking about that for a long time. If you step back a little bit, about 10 years ago, Macron, Merkel started talking about it, Rutte started talking about it, and of course no one listened to them. Actually, the things started to change when geopolitics really started to change and technology became so important in our lives. And so you saw that when Scholz gave a speech in 2022 in Prague, that 1/3 of the speech was actually about sovereignty, and not about German sovereignty, about European sovereignty. So we could start talking about it. Now we need to also go from talking and analysis, and there will be more needed of that, to practice, to practical action. That's very important. And the EuroStack exercise does give a lot of suggestions for practical action that you can take. And part of that, let me make just 2 points of that is, do we know what we talk about? So what is this strategic autonomy or our dependency? And the other is, what kind of industrial, forward-looking, modern industrial policy are we actually talking about? And so if you say we need to deliver more technological sovereignty, you need to be capable, you need to know things, you need to have enough capacity, enough people, enough servers, enough fabs, and you need to have enough control. So essentially, strategic autonomy is about making sure that you have the competences or capabilities, as Francesco called it, you have enough capacity to deliver, you have enough control to convincingly deliver the ability to decide on your own future, because that's what it is about, our own future and the future also of our children. So EuroStack is not a one-off type of initiative, it's a part of a long-term thinking and is also looking forward quite far. So we have, I think in that sense, also a great responsibility for the coming generation. Now, if you then want to know what we are talking about, it's good that you have an idea of how dependent we are, and we are very dependent. So 80% of our technologies are coming from outside Europe. And that's not always a problem, but are they coming from trusted partners? And of course, geopolitics upsets this very much, what you call trusted. When we talk about large language models and AI, 95% dependency we have. You know, 70% of the large language models are coming from the United States, 20% from China, a little bit is coming from Europe. So we are really having to do something in that area. There are other areas where perhaps we have a better position, but Alexandra already said it also, and also the commissioner, about cloud, how a huge dependency we have in the field of cloud. Hard to change that unless we also think about different ways of working, different paradigms. Chips, perhaps we are a bit better, but it's quite varied picture. You know, it's a complex value chains also, and a very, very great dependency on critical materials, as everybody knows. So the whole digital world also relates to the world of materials and the world of energy and the world of finance, and therefore this talk about strategic autonomy and sovereignty is a bit wider than digital also, but digital is clearly at the center of it. So last week we were in front of the Digital Decade Board in Gdansk, and the Digital Decade is the overall EU policy for digital, and that kind of is an umbrella to put lots of things together. And one of the things that the Digital Decade is really strong at is putting up targets. The commissioner was talking about give us targets for the end of the year or beyond, and Digital Decade gives a number of these targets for Europe to go digital, for example, AI use. Can you make use of these targets in order to become more concrete about sovereignty? I think yes. You know, we should not only ask how many companies are using AI, we should ask which AI are they using, where it's coming from. We should not only ask that we increase the take-up of cloud among small companies, we should ask which cloud are they using, which 5G is actually supplied, which suppliers are there. All of these kind of questions we can ask. If we say we need to have more talent and more skilled people, in which fields do we have to have that? Because these are the fields that matter for our future. So this is actually quite practical because, you know, we don't need to do that much. We are already doing these kind of surveys about take the uptake of AI or of cloud. We just have to also ask where is it coming from? And that will already give us an indication for our technological digital sovereignty and how we can improve that. It's of course political to put up the targets where you want to go, but we need to have that political debate. So I think EuroStack is also very much about hitting the ground running with the actions and also knowing what we are talking about, these competences, these capabilities, this control, and Sebastiano will hopefully say a bit more about the EuroStack catalog, where we are also asking for these kind of very concrete indications. Briefly about a modern synergistic policy. Alexandra mentioned it already. It's the role, for example, of public procurement, a crucial component in it. But actually what we are arguing in the EuroStack report is that you need to use all policy instruments that can contribute to an industrial policy. And so let me give a few examples how you can combine things. And we are not necessarily doing it right now. So again, these are, it's kind of like nothing, it's no rocket science to think of these kind of things. The commissioner was talking about a quantum strategy. So if we invest in quantum computing, and especially in quantum encryption, for example, you can be sure that there will be barriers in the internal market, because this is close to national security, so nationally people will invent that this is actually something that has to be certified in the country, and they doubt whether they can buy it from another country in Europe. We have to clear this barrier in the internal market right away, because we can see it coming. So invest in quantum computing or quantum communications or quantum sensing and make sure that the internal market functions. Then actually we don't need to have a law even. We need to make sure that it's clear from the beginning that certification in one country is valid as certification in another country. And of course, quantum technologies have to be bought by our governments. I mean, no joking around, we invest a lot in that, so I think this is part of what has to be mandatory public procurement, and we can justify it under national security without getting in conflict with WTO. And then the other component that has come much into play recently is, of course, the defense component. So I think we need to connect the quantum strategy also to defense. Think of quantum sensing and drones. It's kind of like a natural combination. So if we have targets like produce 1 million quantum sensing enabled drones a year, in Europe we create a market, we use the civil defense combination in a suitable way. Very briefly, three other practical examples where you can do this more combined, synergistic industrial policy using all the policy instruments. Cyber capacity building, we have got great cyber knowledge in Europe. We have great regulatory framework, I think. We really know a lot about it, and we actually also work together with third countries and telling about that in cyber capacity building. I have been at these meetings. There is not a single European company at these meetings internationally. There's one company present, Microsoft. So I think we can be much smarter in simple ways. We have to combine good approaches in Europe, good European solutions, simply with trade promotion. Now, this may be kind of heresy, but I think it's part of the game. European cloud, you already mentioned it. If we do that, put it in the digital public infrastructures. Digital public infrastructures are a critical asset, critical assets you want to have under your control. So this is, in my view, part of, indeed, obligations on public procurement, at least for the cross-border public infrastructures. And because we typically in Europe have the approach that you connect the national infrastructure to European infrastructure, I think this will also trickle down in the national infrastructures. And finally, a very concrete example. Monday, a week ago, there was a very interesting announcement, a good announcement, I think, by a number of telcos that said, telecom companies that said, we will be leaders in the AI gigafactories, and we will really build these AI gigafactories. And they did this announcement together with NVIDIA. Understandable, because if you want to build gigafactories today, you need to have the most advanced AI chips, and probably they are coming from NVIDIA, largely. But they did not announce that as a counterpart of that, they would actually work with the EU Chips Initiative to develop the next generation of AI chips coming from Europe. If they had done that, that's what I would call a modern industrial policy. Can be repaired, of course, or perhaps they are doing it, I hope so. But anyway, I think you can get very, very practical in these kind of areas.
Thank you. Okay, this can be fixed immediately if Jakob changes the announcement and you know, in the name of the whole industry, publicly states. Well, there's some elements already that are emerging on a little bit more proactive stance also in external action, right? 3 weeks ago in this room, we presented the international digital strategy of the EU with both the External Action Service and the DG Connected. There are some elements there that at least try to go in that direction of being a bit more proactive in developing an EU tech offer internationally. A lot, of course, we need to see the implementation of this in practice, but I think some of the things that can be done within the EuroStack movement, as we call it, or movement of movements, can also be translated into a concrete EU tech offer for the rest of the world, right? So very important. Sebastiano, you now have to guide us towards, you know, well, what are we talking about? You know, what is already there? Because one thing is develop and build the solutions, as Francesca was saying, but some solutions are already there. You started collecting them and in representation of a large number of small and medium-sized enterprises. So over to you.
Thank you. Is it on? You have to switch it on like this. It's on. Thank you, Andrea. I know you want me to speak about the EuroStack catalog, and I will, but before doing that, there are a couple of things. Because number one, something I have to say, many of us thought when we heard EVP Virkkunen, we were hoping she would say a little bit more, let's be frank, okay? But let's also see the glass half full. As Alexandra said, let's look at the journey with it. Let's look at what has happened since the 20-something of September last year. This was a completely invisible story. Okay, tech sovereignty, EuroStack, no one was talking about it. Now we have the journalists here, we have the top politicians, we have everyone. The media are talking about it every second day. The governments, as you heard, not only Germany, but also France, Spain, Denmark, the presidency of the EU, we are really, really on top of a journey which we can only imagine where this will take us. And let's not forget, the market is shifting. There is really a demand for sovereign solution. This is what really matters for the industry and for all of us. Because when there is a demand, there's going to be investments and there's going to be solutions. So I am overall, with or without the Commission support, I am super, super optimistic about what is happening and what will happen, and we have to be. Another thing I want to say before going to the catalog, why do I think this EuroStack, Francesca, Paul, and everyone, is really a good idea? Because we've been told for years, Europe is a laggard in digital. You have lost this revolution. Look at the US, you have a competitivity gap, productivity gap, and so on and so forth. The Draghi report, all right. And what are we doing? What have we been doing? What is the recipe that we have been trying to do to solve that problem? Think about it. The recipe we have been trying to do is the recipe that was written in Silicon Valley. You Europeans have to look at what you are good at, and you're going to be good at the application layers. You have a lot of startups that can do the platforms. Fantastic. So you have to put a lot of public money in that. Fantastic. So we have been doing that for 20 years. And I'm saying that representing a lot of SMEs and startups. So all of these startups trying to succeed in the application layer, where are they going? They are either bought outright by big tech, because this is what happens, or if they are not, they start orbiting in the ecosystem of big tech, meaning that they are attached to the infrastructure, the assets which are owned by big tech, firstly cloud computing, but not only. Also the online platforms, the AI agents, and so on. So all of them have to use this infrastructure which is not theirs. And what is that? As Francesca said, this means value capturing, value extraction. It means all of our best startups, even if they remain in Europe, the more successful they are, the more they make the US companies richer. This is what is happening with Mistral. Let's make no mistake. Mistral had no option at a certain point, but either being acquired by Microsoft, they could not because it was anti-competitive, or start orbiting around Microsoft, meaning using their cloud computing and platform for distribution. So now the EuroStack is saying the opposite. It's saying, look, maybe we didn't do the right thing. Maybe we should start investing in the infrastructure thing, because if we can own and control the infrastructure, then everything will follow. As Francesca said, this is where our big gap is, and this must be the objective. And I hope Paul and others, we will manage to put this also as a target for the digital decades. Now to the catalog. What we are announcing, and you said that more or less, Andrea, to not only us, not only the European Digital SME Alliance, but with the large coalition of the willing, of the like-minded, including researchers and experts from CEPS, from Bertelsmann, Francesca, and many more. I have a very long list. with me. We are announcing that we start working at a catalog of tech sovereign solutions to implement the EuroStack. This is a very open coalition. It's a very inclusive thing. It doesn't belong really to anyone. It belongs to all those who are willing to contribute. So it's very open, and we will definitely look for more and more partnerships in that respect from the public and the private sector. Anyone who's willing to contribute is super welcome. Again, inclusiveness, and no one owns it. This is as large as possible. Many of us are here. Francesco is one of us, and Martin from Bertelsmann, etc. Many people are willing to contribute to this. This will look into a few things. The exact shape has to be defined by all those who will contribute, but we agreed to look into a few things. First of all, we want to look into the EuroStack tech layers. So we want to look at solutions that are in those layers defined in the EuroStack papers. We want to look for companies, solutions that have European ownership and control, okay, because it will be easy to take something that comes from outside. And we want to look at solutions where the data remains in Europe, but there is no backdoor, there is no possibility to control it from outside. So those are the few criteria which are very simple, and we want to try to implement. It will focus only on market-ready solutions. So it's not going to be the catalog of the European projects, to be clear. It's going to be the catalog of the market-ready solutions. It will inform policymakers, companies, buyers from the private and the public sectors what is available, what is there, and also what is not there, what we need to develop, or what we need to put together, what we need to integrate, okay? And it is ultimately the first effort to aggregate the market. Why market aggregation is important? Because we don't miss the solutions. Let's look outside in the technology sector. We have all the solutions. The problem is that they are simply not integrated. If you want to replace Microsoft today, you have to look for, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 or even 20 different smaller players and integrate among each other. So, let me give you a simple example. Think about Microsoft Teams, because all of us use it. Not us, but many organizations do. Microsoft Teams or Google Drive in the workspace. You try to replace that, and that's not simple, because you have the solutions. What you have to do, you have to find a cloud provider. You have to find a collaboration platform, let's say Nextcloud or another one. You have to have the document editing software. That one is integrated in Nextcloud, but okay, otherwise it wouldn't be. You need an email provider. You need a conference call tool, because you cannot use Teams, right? You need a messaging app. You probably need an AI assistant. And this is just the beginning. So we are talking about, what, 8 or 7 different solutions that you need to integrate. I can tell you, this is possible, it is happening, but it takes efforts. And this is why aggregation of industry players is the solution. And I hope this is what this catalog will do with the help of everyone who's willing to support it.
Thank you, Sebastiano. Thanks a lot. I already foresee a potentially heated Q&A session at the end, also because one of the key questions that I will ask is whether, the EuroStack movement is, how does it see coexistence with non-European tech companies, which is inevitable, and how to organize whether the movement is for or against, if you wish, right? Whether it's about developing solutions that then stand a chance and can also be facilitated in specific sectors that are critical, right? By public policy and by demand side innovation instruments, as we call them in the literature, or whether there's something more that, according to you, should be done to trigger a transition. And geopolitically, economically, industrially, that's a very important question and a very delicate one. So I'm not going to give any and necessarily any answer now. Of course, I have my opinions. I know that there is a wide range of opinions potentially even in the room. So I start warming up for when we enter the discussion. We now go to Jakob, who has promised to give a different. No, I'm kidding. to make Paul happy by changing the statement on video. No, Jakob, I mean, you're welcome to offer the views from Deutsche Telekom, also your personal views on what you've heard so far.
Yeah, thank you very much, and very happy to be here to share a bit the industry view on all of this. You know, we could have had this momentum that we're now talking about since month much earlier. And I say this because I feel like I'm a veteran in this discussion. I remember days in Banlieue, whoever remembers Banlieue in DG Connect, many years ago, probably 8 years ago, where we discussed with DG Competition, we looked at slides and we presented them slides where we showed them the sheer dependency, the market shares of cloud providers that are non-European, there was a lot of discussion around it. Do you remember the data strategy, the high impact project of the Commission, 2 billion euros, where are the member states? Then the member states came with a cloud declaration many years ago now, a few years for sure. Then there was a cloud rule book announced. I've never seen it so far, but it was announced. A marketplace. So a lot of great initiatives that we've seen over the past years, but I have to really say, we have been sleeping. And also, to say it clearly, the European Commission was not as fast and as ambitious as we believed and hoped. So that's the first assessment of the past. The second is the private sector. Has the private sector been sleeping? I just attended a similar discussion in Gdansk, when was it, last week ago. And I said, you know, we are a member of Gaia X. And I said a German expression that says, we are some form of a burnt child. And people looked at me, I think, a bit estranged. So I looked again at the translation. In English, you say, once bitten, shy twice. I don't want to say we are shying away, but I can tell you that, of course, it has been very difficult in Gaia X to achieve what we all now want to achieve here. I sat in the committee that was formulating the policy rules for Gaia X. It took us a long time. Many private players included, not only European, also US. So you can imagine it's a nice party there, and everybody's happy and eating popcorn, but the solutions in the end are very difficult to achieve. Now, we're still a member of Gaia X, and I would come back to it later, where I still believe that some of the concepts and ideas have been, you know, very important for this debate and are important. But so to say, yeah, have we been sleeping? I think, you know, there is some form of a commitment in the last years, but we can do more, and I come to what the private sector can do more. Public sector has been completely sleeping in their castle, I would say. And it's interesting to see now that you have first announcements of some governments who, by the way, have been tremendously opposed in these discussions in the last couple of years, who are now finally waking up. And okay, I don't want to blame them. You know, in the end, if they're waking up and now having a different view to these things, why not? By the way, I can say the same to the European Parliament. Not to Alexandra, but I have seen MEPs who were defending the basic statement that says, well, you know, we are innovative in Europe, and if the innovation comes from a US cloud provider, so who cares, as long as we can innovate? These positions have turned in some parts, and we are grateful for that. And so this is the past, and these are the last couple of weeks. Now there is indeed this momentum, and we are very happy about it, because I think it's the first time that you have member states who more or less, you know, kind of turned in this debate. You have a European Commission who, and I come to the words of the EVP also in a second, who seems to be really committed now to bring in initiatives. And you have a private sector who is ready. And now I have to say that Paul didn't read the media right, because it was not telcos, it was one telco, and in fact it was this telco who who announced that we are going to build a gigafactory, indeed with NVIDIA. By the way, and it's true what Mrs. Virkkunen said, such a popular thing that there are many players who announced initiatives. I don't find that a bad thing. I read the Handelsblatt article that says they don't get their together in Germany, and now you have Schwarzgruppe and Deutsche Telekom. I think it's a great thing that so many players here are actively pitching, and not only pitching, I mean, whatever happens with what the European Commission will decide, we want to build this. And all I can say, and I hope you forgive me that I cannot go into the details of you know, a project that we have just handed in, but I can say we had an initial announcement with an initial technology partner that doesn't need to stay like that. And what we have, you know, handed into the Commission is also a wider concept than that. Public sector, create, demand, 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 and I can only, I mean, I listened to what Alexandra said, and it's very difficult to disagree with anything today because it was 100% spot on. So spot on that I have to say, when we talk about the Gigafactory as an example, I would go so far that it's not Deutsche Telekom's most important interest to get funding money. It is our most important interest to get a commitment, to a commitment of demand, that when we build this, we're not just building it for the sake of it, but that somebody is actually using it. You remember the goals of the 10,000 climate neutral edge nodes, and I think now we are at 100, I forgot the exact number, but we're far away from it. So it's not only about announcements, it now needs to really, there needs to be a delivery, and the delivery indeed needs to come from the public sector. So public sector has something to do now, private sector has something to do now, and I think we are ready, and it's not only Airbus and us, it's Schwarzgruppe, it's Jonas, it's Nextcloud, it's not only German providers, it's OVH. So there is a thriving European ecosystem. The only problem is that this ecosystem has lost significantly market share. We were somewhere at 26 or somewhere percent in 2017, and now we're down to 13%. So it's a niche. But please at least let us be in this niche when it comes to highly sensitive data, where we believe we have a role to play. And now comes the third, and then I'm already ending, policy. We need definitely political support. One support has been given by this really well received initiative report, and I hope it really is being read in the European Commission, but I have some hopes there, and also by the member states. So what can the European Commission do? I was writing and joking with my team colleague now, because we said somehow the EVP, she's stealing our idea. I can tell you already that we are going to hand in our contribution to the Cloud and AI Development Act very soon. There's a consultation running. I'm sure everybody here in the room is probably contributing to it. And we're going to ask for labels. Just what she said, and I think that says a lot what she said already. I haven't heard this idea before, so the introduction of a label. And here I come back to Gaia X. That was the initial idea, create a label of sovereign cloud. But in order to create this, you need to define it. And here again, I echo what you said. You need a clear definition of what is cloud sovereignty. Everybody in the room, including hyperscalers, will say, well, I have a definition of sovereign cloud. I even call it sovereign cloud. I would put into question whether, you know, arguing with, we're going to have some clause in some TNCs that will basically compensate you as an end user if ever there was a request from outside of Europe, whether this can be really, you know, defined as a sovereign cloud solution. So I think there needs to be a clear definition what that is. And I think that definition needs to be set by a European Commission in this Cloud and AI Development Act. That's the second. The third is, we talked about the digital decade targets, and there are many targets in there. I just mentioned the 10,000 edge nodes. I understand there's a revision of these targets coming up. Why not put a target in here how much the public sector finally needs to deliver in terms of demand? So really walk the talk. And yes, I agree with public procurement, but let's not necessarily wait only for public procurement. I think that can be done in this Cloud and AI Development Act, and you can put a goal and measurable KPIs to the digital decade target, so you can really measure which government, which highly sensitive, workload is then being put in a European cloud. And the last one is a marketplace. We still believe it's a great idea. This goes very much in the direction of it. If the Commission can finally bring it, since years it's been announced, it would be great, because I think the biggest problem in all of this debate is a lack of transparency. And many medium-sized companies, and the Commission did a lot of impact assessments on all of this, do want to know how secure their data and their industrial data is. So they need to see it, but they don't see, there is no transparency given to them. Who's going to read some contracts here, B2B? It needs to be somehow, I don't know, scheduled. And then once you have a definition here, then you can put this in a marketplace, and then you have very clear visibility and transparency on who can deliver what and who is potentially subject to third country requests, and so on and so forth. So I think it's not rocket science what we're discussing now. I want to be an optimist. I have been a bit pessimistic in the past couple of years because things didn't really move, but now indeed this momentum needs to be used, and I can only say, because I didn't mention once the EuroStack initiative or the several ones, this is very, very good, because it is indeed creating this momentum that you all managed, that sometimes the private sector, to be a bit self-critical, doesn't manage enough. And so we applaud you for this, and I think in the end it's not about top down or bottom up or public only or private only. I think I said very clearly, we all need to move the needle now, and if we all do that, then this can become a reality. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jakob. Very good. And with people like us that work in think tanks, we normally celebrate when a political decision maker steals our ideas. And I think you should do the same, right? And when you have the impression, it means that they had an impact, right? I feel a little bit for the people that have been standing until now in the room. So there are a few seats that have become available. So you maybe take the opportunity to sit down, just so that you are more comfortable between now and the end of the meeting. I move to Pascal. For your view, and thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the invitation. I really do not have anything to add, and I have a lot of stuff to add. Let's be clear. But I knew I didn't have anyone to convince since I read your report. Honestly, I think everything was there. It's the strange feeling of having had the feeling of being so alone. Not as long as you guys, so that's the good part for me. But it was still a year and a half, right? And we were actually fighting side by side. And at some stage, you open your eyes in a new room and you say, that's very weird, because we're all saying the same thing. Yet, I don't yet see the CUCS falling from the tree, right? And if we're also convinced that we need a label and that we need that to be defined and applied in a voluntary manner to the private sector users, such as me, and I will explain why I need it. I mean, because that's maybe the only useful contribution I can bring today. But all the sectors we brought along. Yeah, we did this exercise of going transsectoral, transnational. We have 100 companies, 50,000 SMEs saying exactly the same thing. As users, we have to be able to know what we buy, because for some of our needs, we need something which is immune from non-EU influence, right? Disruption or data capture, extraterritoriality. It's very simple what we said, and effectively we hit a wall for quite a long time. Now apparently the wall is not the same one as even a month and a half ago. I would really love to see that fall from the tree. Because if that UCS fell from the tree, it would be the precedent we need for the label that the VP was talking about, both on the private side and on the public side. So honestly, if you want to give me a proof that we are serious about that, it's a very low-level text. We don't need a long debate. We don't need to spend months on it. It's been there for three years already. Let's just do it. And once we have that, we have the cornerstone of about what sovereignty needs to be. You said it. Control, ownership, control, design. Design, never forget the word design. You must be free to design the solution, because if you are not free to design it, and if someone holds you and is able to pull the plug of what you can modify in the future, you're not autonomous, right? So, and localization, of course, right? So the sovereignty definition. The public procurement, I mean, we saw it coming since 6 months. I'm very happy that now it's center stage of this debate. The how is something that will need to be debated, because mandatory, voluntary, quantification, sensitive data, this is something that most probably deserves a public debate with the council, with the parliament, etc. And that is a very interesting topic to look at. But clearly, this is about creating a demand and expressing a demand. But once again, you will need to know what is European enough, and to know what is European enough, I'm sorry, EUCS has been on the table for 3 years. And it answers that question. Now, another point about the policy, I don't believe that it can work unless the Commission and the states and the Parliament, but the Parliament is apparently already doing its job, are actually coming together, as Draghi is saying in the governance sections of his report. It needs to be aligned. I mean, the number one problem we have in Europe, and Airbus is the counterexample, is fragmentation, right? If we don't overcome fragmentation, and we know how difficult it is to overcome fragmentation when you have several states, right? You need to bring those together, despite geo-return, despite interest that one could have at a given moment, or budget it could have at a given moment. That's the challenge for me. So let's really not forget this very important element about alignment of what the EU is proposing and how the states are acting behind. It means this is the key to industrial policy, by the way, in general. If you're not able to do sectorally something with this alignment, we're useless. 1 minute about why it is fundamental for us, because I heard a lot about critical sectors and defense and, okay. And I'm just out of the Paris Air Show, so I just cannot not do the pitch, right? Aerospace and defense, I mean, I would say if there is one critical strategic industry, it probably is us. Not only because of sovereignty reasons, I mean, defense and space, you see that very well, but also for competitiveness. Not every sector has one consolidated Airbus, which leads the world market on civil aircraft since 6 years now. So we have this ability and the strength that we bring to the EU system to have the competitiveness, the sovereignty element, and the innovation all together. This is the situation in which we are. But what is, I think, the most important stuff is not to brag about that. It's to say the challenge that we have in front of us today, in all those 3 pillars, aero, civil, space, and defense, fundamentally relies upon much more digitalization. And part of it is necessarily sovereign. Part of it. I'm not saying all of it, because we can very well coexist between non-sovereign and sovereign solutions, but we need sovereign EU solutions for certain things. And let me give you a few examples. Defense is obvious, right? But defense today, with the increase of capability needs that we have in Europe, it means more and more transnational collaboration programs. This is the next game changer. When you say that, it means you'll be designing those programs and those capabilities all together, transnationally. Today, you have requirements which are different in each and every member state, including on digital. So even on defense, which is obvious in terms of sovereignty, you will need some degree of harmonization of requirements between countries, probably at a European level, and maybe RIARM can be useful in this respect. Space, we mentioned Elon Musk a bit earlier on. Space is all about data. It's only data. Telecom, Earth observation, navigation, positioning, all is about data, and all the value is in the data. You understand that all is dual. The same satellite can take pictures of cars in the parking for a rental company, and not exactly the same, but really the technology, or of a tank, a Russian tank in the Ukrainian region. So you see the duality, and you see the importance of the digitalization, which is obvious. What is a bit less obvious is for the aircraft business. Because you would tend to say, okay, well, so. But actually, for us, the revolution that is coming up is decarbonization, right? That's the next frontier for us, meaning 2050 net zero. How do we get there? We have to completely, not completely, but significantly disrupt the innovation on our aircraft. Our Air320, which is basically, you know, Airbus, aerospace and defense, 80% are airplanes in turnover. 70% of that is the A320. We need that to transition to an aircraft which is fundamentally more advanced in terms of sustainability. And that needs to happen the next 10, 15 years. This means redesigning a lot because we want sustainable fuel in there, because we want hydrogen in there, 2 different programs. How do you design? You don't design alone. You design with all your suppliers. And you design based on a backbone, which is a digital backbone, a digital twin. What if your digital twin is stored in a non-secure place? Right? That's the issue, one problem. And you're absolutely certain that your non-European friends are going to look over your shoulder day in, day out. So that's a very concrete thing. And that is the core of the business model of Airbus in the next 10 years. Number one. Number two, once you do that, you need to ramp it up at a level of production which is the same as we have today, even better, so that you can remain competitive and deliver to your clients along your backlog. It's enormous. To be able to do that, and it's already very difficult, you need to shift from a pyramid of supply chain management. I talk to tier 1, which talks to tier 2, to go to, I got your signal, but I'll be quicker. And then I don't have anything more to say, so then I can shut up for the rest. To a hub structure, right? So not a pyramid, but a hub. But if you say a hub, you say a cloud. So you need a cloud to discuss with all of your suppliers where they are, how they progress, how they deliver, where they have problems. This cloud cannot be not secured. The same thing, because everybody will try to capture that data. Air traffic management, the last one. 5 to 10% of decarbonization will come from optimizing trajectories. You only do that with one thing, digitalization. Only that. Imagine if this cloud is somehow vulnerable to non-EU intrusion, data capture or disruption in terms of safety and in terms of decarbonization. So I think it was just, a few elements, very concrete, to show how the next frontier for a company like ours, which is a user of those technologies, is fundamentally about more digital, even if it's about decarbonization, and about including sovereign cloud technology bricks in our operations. So just to give this very concrete input, and on the policy side, I think I said in the beginning what I needed, which aligns very well with what you say. So please, UCS now.
All right, thank you very much. So indeed, I was surprised when you said at the beginning you didn't have anything to add, Pascal. Alexandra, no, you need to leave. So thanks a lot for being with us. Ciao. So there's quite a lot that you will see happening in terms of some of the things that Pascal was referring to. One of the key changes that we've seen over the past weeks in the debate on industrial policy and research and innovation policy is the enhanced attention towards dual use. Yesterday, DG Research and Innovation published 2 reports on dual use. I've contributed to one of them. We are in a completely different situation compared to the past. So we moved in 1 year from a situation in which most of the scientific community and also the member states and the European Commission thought that, for example, Horizon Europe could not be used for dual use, for funding dual use of research and innovation. Today, it's actually the other way around. We know the money is going to go to defense. We're actually trying to make the most of what can come back also to civilian applications. And so it's a completely different perspective that we have. And perspective, I call them in recent papers, quantum policy making, and not because it's about quantum, but because just like quantum computers try to tick several boxes at once, or try the same password, so different variations of a password all at once. Here we need to tick the decarbonization, the security, the competitiveness goals for every euro that we spend in the next multi-annual financial framework. So it's going to be quite complicated. It's a very elaborate exercise. It takes a lot of thinking, and even quantum leap, if you wish, in thinking compared to what many of us that have been working on public policy in the tech space in Europe have done until now. So I want to open the floor to comments and questions. Let me see how many people want or want to provide. I see 4 hands for now. So I'm going to collect this 4. I don't know if there's. Should I pass on the microphone myself, or there should be somebody from. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah. Okay. Oh, thanks, Martin. Thanks. Where's the people? And Philip, please introduce yourself, like everybody, and you take the floor so that people know who you are.
It is working now. Philip Suzelek, German Research Center for Artificial Intelligence, and Claire, or Karen as it's called now. Since we talked a little bit about the past, we actually argued for CERN for AI in 2017, starting 2017. That included what is now called a large gigafactory. We could have been in a different place, if I may say so. The commission picked that up as lighthouses, and no one talks about lighthouses anymore with complete failure. Instead of one, they wanted dozens of them. Anyway, let's not get there. So we welcome not one gigafactory, but 5 or whatever it will be at the end. But there's 3 big worries that I want to express here. The one is we welcome that there is a strong industry. There must be a strong industry component to that. But we must not forget the entire ecosystem, from basic research, applied research, the small industries, startups. And I don't see that in the proposals. I don't see all the proposals, but I see what those people are talking about, and they're not talking about the ecosystem. And I think that's something that the Commission really needs to include when they offer the call in the fall or whenever exactly that happens. And Paul mentioned that. We shouldn't throw 20 billion euros just at NVIDIA. There needs to be the European Processor Initiative, and we need to include that part from my perspective. The other is really the entire ecosystem. We need to have those gigafactories and whatever the CERN for AI, whatever that means for the Commission now, which is something I would like to find out and maybe help define. We need that to be linked to each other, right? Right now, these are isolated islands, and we've been there. The networks of excellence, a research network of excellence, were defined as individual proposals. There was, after the fact, the Commission started trying to link them together, not from the start, and that is very, very difficult. But really the important part from my perspective is we need to get agile and ambitious, and that includes the research side. Who is going to run those applications? Who's going to develop them? It's the people from the universities and all we need those talents. And those talents, the way we do projects, research projects right now, is small projects. We're really good at these small projects with small incremental results. But those people then go into the US, where they build the large systems, the platform, and all of those things. We don't even offer them the chance to do that here in Europe, right? And so we need to make that an incremental part of what we're doing here, right? And not just create a CERN for science, but really a CERN that includes all of the different aspects that we're here. And we've done that before. I just want to remind us of doing that, right? We've done ESA. It was actually called the CERN for Space initially. And we were way behind in that area, as you mentioned. We did Airbus in an area where we're way behind at the time. And we did CERN in an area where we didn't have any good standing at the point. So we can do that again. And so I really want us to think not just on the industrial side, to really think the network of all of those pieces together. And I think it's really important.
Thanks a lot, Philip. Then also you introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, Matthias Gurm. I support the EuroStack initiative, which started as the Epsilon Cloud Infrastructures and Services, and I really liked talks about inclusiveness and so on. But if I take my personal feeling, there is still a lot of finger pointing in the room. The one is too slow, the other is too sleepy, and the one has failed. And for me, it would be the best to get the definition right. What's the technical sovereignty? What's the technical sovereignty cloud? The criteria clear, and then everybody can decide who is in and who is out. And with that, I really plea for keep that inclusiveness by a clear definition. But my question then to the podium, I don't know, Paul or Pascal, would be how would you set up the process? You mentioned EUCS to really get to this accepted definition for a for a sovereign cloud. That would be my question.
All right, I will give all speakers a possibility to give a final statement, but I want to collect two questions that were there in the back of the room. Thank you, Xavier.
Thank you very much. So my name is Yanis. I have 3 different hats today. I study public innovation. I was part of the open source community as well, and now I work in Sensenelec that does the European standards. It's the 2 out of the 3 European standardization organization. The 3rd one is ETSI. So first, my first comment would be that the public sector that in all of your speeches has a big and heavy role to create demand, it's too difficult for them to innovate in reality. So especially when it comes then to procuring software and open source software, they have to also learn how to maintain it after procuring it. So we have to also talk about the public sector being able to adapt to the current market, not only for them to start demanding, but have the culture to do that. Not everybody is Estonia, you know, like we have other countries as well. Now, when it comes to standards, because I heard sovereignty, harmonization, which is very important for harmonized standards, synergy, certifications that align between European countries, redesigning and free to design the solution. What is the role of standardization organizations for that? How can the standardization organizations support, let's say, EuroStack and the operational part of EuroStack? Can they work as, let's say, a place for synergy in order to make the EuroStack and digital sovereignty a reality, a space to work on, a space to regulate, a space to harmonize? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's another question, comment in the back of the room. Thank you, Xavier.
Thanks. I have to stand up again.
Yeah, hello, Megan.
Hi, it's Megan Richards. I wanted to make a comment, but also a question, and that relates to the agreement that was taken yesterday in The Hague by the NATO allies to not all allies, to increase defense spending to 3.5 plus 1.5. And this, for me, is a huge opportunity, because many of you have mentioned this, to encourage where necessary, and obviously most of the EU member states are NATO members, to use this opportunity to transform the requirements for secure EuroStack digitalization. Here's where the money should go. Mr. Trump, I'm sure, thinks, oh, they'll all spend it on our cloud and our applications and our things. So this is really where we have to move forward. So how can we do that?
All right, let me give a final chance to people that are in the room, whether they want to contribute anything to the debate. I'm about to give the floor, perhaps in inverted order, to our panelists, but very quickly, because this time I'm going to be stricter in time management, guys. And perhaps, I don't know if Pascal, you have something to invert the order and come back here to me. Okay, so, okay, no further comments. Pascal, I'm going to give you 60 seconds.
Okay. On the 5% and the spending, one thing which is obvious is what you said. Let's buy European with that money. I mean, that will be the challenge in the European spending. And the next question is, what is European enough? And that is extremely connected to the question of the label, because you will find out that the criteria are actually very aligned. Content, design, ownership, you'll find a very clear parallel between those two worlds of defense and not defense, and digital in this case. But let's not forget that most of what I talked about on purpose was on the civil side, because otherwise we tend to forget that the big chunk of the issue is on absolutely transsectoral commercial stuff, which can be very sensitive in terms of commercial competitiveness, for instance. And then how do we plug Sensenelec to a potential label? Let's have first the label, and then we see how we optimize it.
Thank you very much, Pascal. Jakob?
Yeah, 3 answers to 3 questions. First, to Matthias, of course, you must have realized I finger pointed to all of us, not only to one entity, and it was the past. And I also referred to the future and the present, and I'm very optimistic at this moment in time. So, but fair point taken, not too much finger pointing. Let's get into action. Number 2, on the standards, the number 1 topic that was always pushed against us when we discussed in GAIA-X policy rules, and we said you need sufficient safeguards for access from outside of Europe, then there was always the counter argument, but we don't have standards for that. And without standards, this cannot be implemented. So we cannot propose it in the rule book. And it's a bit of a chicken and hen thing that we also see in the AI Act at the moment, where everybody says, press the pause button because we don't have standards. So I'm not have anything against standards. I think ultimately we need them. But if these things don't come fast, then we can have another sovereignty discussion in 6 years here on the panel. And the third one on defense, I mean, for me, it makes me very optimistic what I hear from you, that as an end user, business end user, there is an interest to move to European cloud providers, because I always hear the accusation that we're not innovative enough, that we don't make it, it's not possible, and we're not competitive. The security argument seems to outweigh maybe a lack of we are spot on 100% comparable to the Amazons and AWS of this world. We are working on this, of course, but I'm just very optimistic, and that's why I think you are right. Yeah, these are the sectors that need to move into solutions, into different solutions.
Thanks, Jakob. Sebastian.
I'll take the question on standards because as you might know, I also happen to be the vice chair of one of the 3 ESOs, the ETSI. And I'll tell you this, I think standards are essential, but I'm talking about one specific type of standards. I'm talking about interoperability standards. Because as I said earlier, the industry, as we all agreed, is highly fragmented. And we need to defragment. We need them to work together across the same, let's say, open standards. The biggest success we had in Europe in terms of industrial policy via standards, I'm sure the gentleman from Deutsche Telekom, Jakob, will agree, is the GSM. Okay, it's a standard from probably 87, which has created a huge market. Okay, think about it. How does it work? If I'm a client of a customer of Deutsche Telekom, I can access the same services I have in Germany if I go to Japan. Does Deutsche Telekom have any resource, any infrastructure in Japan? No, they do not, nor anywhere else probably in the world. Maybe I'm wrong. US.
Biggest provider in the US.
Fantastic. But the point is, what they have agreed to do, and I really applaud for them for doing that, is sharing of resources. So if I am a customer and I need to access the service in Japan or somewhere else, the Japanese telco will provide it. And then they will have a revenue sharing business model among them. They invoice each other. It's not important for me. As a customer, I don't see that. We can do exactly the same in the cloud sector, for instance. If I am a client of OVH or another one and they don't have enough capacity because I have a peak of demand today, they can simply use the capacity of another one. And that is possible through standards, but we have to agree on that. Okay.
Thanks, Sebastiano. Paul.
Very briefly to Jakob, I was actually talking about another announcement of Telefonica and Orange. So I very much appreciate your clarification because that's only encouraging. I think very right what people raised about agile. And we tend to identify agile with simplification. And then we look at the European Commission and it has to simplify laws and regulations, which they do have to do. But I think I realize actually now that several people have mentioned it, agility, simplification is a mindset. So you also need to have that at university level, for example, which got nothing or not that much to do with simplification of regulation, but with the mindset of acting quickly. And perhaps we should actually spend a bit more time on that, how we do that. Also in policy making, and one of the ways is, of course, to do forward-looking policy making. So, for example, how can you be more agile in standardization? Take the example that I just mentioned about quantum technology that is coming up. You can be sure that all kind of barriers will arise in the internal market. So let's be ahead of the game. That's part of standardization. Make sure that this certification is already there, based upon standards, so that we don't have these barriers in the internal market. About this kind of agility and simplification, to a certain extent, I think actually we do that really by trying to become action-oriented. You know, we don't need to wait for a catalog to some authority to announce that you can actually start doing that. Do it right now. I think it's really good what people raise here. Let's have a KPI about digital sovereignty. But we can already start doing things, you know, and soon there will be the review also of the digital decade, so we can make that systematic. But we can already start working on it, because it will give us a lot of insight. So I would say start acting now, hit the ground running, and then use the more systematic embedding. Megan's question about defense. You know, when we were writing the EuroStack report with quite a number of other people, but Francesca is really the intellectual leader of that, we realized that at a certain moment in time you have to come out with this report, and in the meantime lots of stuff was happening. Competitiveness compass, it relates to that. Of course, the Draghi and Laterra reports were already there. It builds upon that very strongly. But then you got Rearm Europe, which actually came out after we had issued the report. We have a section on defense, but to some extent, actually, I think this is bouncing it back. I think a number of people could think more about the synergies between the civil and the military side, and you already mentioned several opportunities. Perhaps we need something like a defense stack. And think about it, how then in that case you would start measuring strategic autonomy and where you want to put your priorities, because we cannot do everything at the same time. And we've got critical dependencies. It makes no sense to philosophize while there is a very aggressive enemy at our border. So we also have to be practical and pragmatic, and that holds for the whole area also. You know, this is not about protectionism. This is also about keeping business running, be practical and pragmatic.
Thanks a lot, Paul. Francesca, I'm going to over-regulate you, but so you have to be concise, but please.
Yes, no, I will try to address the ecosystem question, but also I think what I feel is that we have to be a bit bolder in how we are going to use the instruments that we have at our disposal. So I think we are still very much, I mean, I'm just going to say it, a bit in the old paradigm a little bit, no? It's like, okay, you know, what kind of instrument? I mean, all the projects that we mentioned are basically R&D. It's really R&D funding. So it's funding that doesn't have the problem of how it gets into the market, scale, and gets adopted, and then, you know, succeed in the marketplace. Many of these projects are research and investment. So I think the effort really has to be a little bit in a different place. And that's why in the report we are mixing all the instruments. So, and that's how you build an ecosystem. So I just want to address maybe two things. In the VC investment, for example, in Europe, and this is part of the Capital Market Union and so on, which will be very important. If we don't have a public market, what are our successful companies gonna do? They're gonna exit somewhere else, and you lose a lot of value. Also, our investment, so all our institutional investors, they invest mainly abroad. I mean, look at the data. So I am advocating here maybe for sovereignty consideration in investment. At least a percentage of the investment needs to be done in Europe. It needs to happen here. And we have to mobilize institutional investors. A little bit is the 28th regime that, you know, van der Leyen is talking about capital market union, but also I think it has to be something else that is going to be actually anchoring this investment and this innovation in potentially the sovereign stack or whatever that is going to be. I think that's very important, because if you then you want to scale this ecosystem, you have to do it a little bit like that. I mean, learn from big tech. Yes, that's what they do. And I think maybe there we really have to think about it more strategically, what we're doing, because we are not scaling the ecosystem. And I mean, I have a very simple thing to Gaia X. You know, when you were developing this project, I was working with a lot of scale-ups and startups because I was running an Italian fund of 5 billion, yes, investment. They were telling me, we do not know how to use, I mean, this is for us useless. I mean, I'm sorry, I have to say it this way, like a lot of these innovators were like, what do we do with it? So if we want to get the talent, and I think this is the time for Europe to get back the talent, because that's what you need. So it's great that we have the telcos and Airbus. I mean, you are critical infrastructure part, but you need the talent. You need the talent to build on top a vibrant, dynamic industrial ecosystem. I mean, in the real sense. And it's going to be, of course, sector by sector and so on. And we have a lot of talent, and we're losing this talent. And I mean, let me say this. The main AI developers in big tech companies, Europeans. Where are they working? In the US. You know, the main stable diffusion, let me call out the stable diffusion from Munich. Who has developed that? A VC from the UK. But they're not just stealing, they're putting 5 times, 10 times the amount of money we put. This is investment. I mean, this is real commitment. So, I mean, I don't want to hear only complain. I think we have to be also doing this commitment. We have to put the investment, the money, yeah, but the investment, you know, is going somewhere else, yes? So that is the ecosystem approach that we need. And I think it is a critical moment because a lot of these AI leaders are coming to us because we are developing and the imaginary here is important because if you want the talented people, you have to tell them, where are we going to be built? Where are the AI labs? So these people are ready to run the AI labs in Europe, but we have to get them operational. We have to get them there, and we have to mobilize capital, and we have to make it happen. So I think that's where it's going to be the stake. That's how we have to do it. So the different players have to be playing at the different roles, and I think mobilizing the right way, the investment, it's going to be critical for that.
Thank you very much, Francesca. I think we've had really a bird's eye view of the many issues that are at stake. You will see also from us at CEPS a lot of work in this direction, not only on the AI side, but also on what's coming up on the MFF and the next framework program for research. There's quite a lot that needs to happen. I think we've collected many, many ideas. I will ask the panelists to remain sitting here because unless now there is a few chairs available, so if you want to go back, up to you. But we'll listen to two final speakers. Muriel Popafava will come from the AI Society Institute and summarize what you've heard, and then we'll give the floor to Martin. So before you start, I will ask our audience to give a big applause to our panelists. So Muriel, over to you. I'm going to give you the microphone really physically.
Thank you. So I have this task of connecting the very rich contributions. So I thought I would connect dots, but actually I will connect the streams because there is definitely, thank you for the rich contributions and this urgent topic for European livelihood. So let's start with the good news because I think we heard many. And the first one is about alignment. Basically, we have alignment on the commitments. We have alignment that it's the right time. It would have been better maybe 8 years ago, but that's actually the right time. We have something that is incredible because we have alignment on the diagnostic at the Commission with a map, with academics, with people from industry, SMEs, intellectuals, policymakers. So we are really in an incredible situation, actually, where we have the diagnostic. And as rightfully said by MAP Alexandra Geese, she said that Europe is a place for facts. So definitely we have the facts. And now we have initial definitions, so we know what we are talking about. We're talking about competence, capacity, control, and we added a cherry on the top about design. Because as it was rightfully said, it's about market, and market is about design, because at the end of the day, it gets to people. So we have initial definitions, we can create labels, and definitely we have something that is really important for the stack not to be a stack of dust, is that we have a dynamic catalog. We have something that is going to follow reality. So we basically have a way to follow the facts. And then for the solutions, we have, some alignment also is here in the solution space. We have definitely an understanding of public procurement as having to be strategic. So we're not going to use public procurement like dust around, but just to have it focused, in order to have the demand that is needed in order for industry to be catalyzed. We have something that is about the market. We have something that is important about market unification, clearing barriers of internal market. We have the importance of integrating solutions. I've recently reviewed a cybersecurity financement in France, and definitely the goal was to create a unified experience of security for companies, meaning a one-stop shop for cybersecurity with different actors. So we definitely have this understanding that products makes the difference, and when they are unified, and disaggregation is important. We have the recurrent topic of open source, which was very nicely portrayed by MAP Alexandra Geese in a way that I really like to call choral. We don't have one actor writing the code. We have chorality, we have polyphony, and this is definitely the fiber and the value of Europe. And for this, we have 3 things to do, that is just push for open source. And the other thing is that we have something that is typical, that was typical in Europe, that is long-term views. And so now we can also leverage on this. We can have this forward-looking policy in order to have a long-term view. And ambition for talent. Talent is definitely the game changer in general at the very beginning. But it's definitely a place where Europe is already excellent, and the idea is to boost excellence, is to be able to create, since the inception, engineers that know about products too. Engineers that know how to collaborate and then want to stay in Europe. I came back from Cornell, but I'm not the only one. The ambition on talent is also an ambition of understanding products and understanding the data capture. That is fundamental. Creating integrated products is the way in order to prevent the data capture. That is actually quite fundamental in the stack. And then now that we have this idea of data capture, I really like to have just one sentence about the sectorial elements that were put forward by Airbus. That is the harmonization. We need to have an harmonization of understanding what is defense. And this goes against the definition as a real actionable in order to move forward the EU stack. So values are competitive advantages in Europe. And I really like the fact that there was this opening of understanding Europe as a global offer. I mean, we're not here only just to save the things in our little Europe. We are also here to offer something that has all our values embedded in technology for the global market. And this is the last point on just not being into an isolationist way of understanding sovereignty, but actually on being able to understand it as a competitive advantage. And so now that we have this choral and polyphonic view of Europe and its technology stack, I would like to say that we are all the stakeholders here. We have to continue this dynamic because we have to move from being stakeholders to be stakeholders and to hold our future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Muriel. Indeed, this leads us to the final act before we go and drink a cocktail together, you know, and continue chatting in a more informal way here downstairs. I will invite Martin Hullin from Bertelsmann to take the floor. Martin, you have the task, which is partly easy because some ideas are circulated, and partly complicated of illustrating how do we move forward, right? Floor is yours.
Thank you very much, but how can I follow stakeholders? I mean, that's what we are going to do. No, first and foremost, I won't take too much time. Staccanovist, oh geez, yeah. Now we see the thought leaders again and think tanks being in the place. No, I don't want to take too much time, actually, but really, first and foremost, wanted to thank also CEPS, the AI and Society Institute from France,
for, I think, already coming together and trying to start pushing forward also this collaborative spirit of this being a much bigger mechanism that needs support of many different entities coming together right now. And I also want to explicitly again thank to our very diverse panel today, also the different perspectives, because the whole harmonic question of, we have different approaches to it, but at the end of the day, how do we fill the how do we achieve, the vision of EuroStack and technological sovereignty / autonomy in Europe will be a very key piece. And I think what we do not enough in Europe at the moment is to also celebrate how far we've come. It was mentioned at the beginning that what has happened since September of last year, of course, thanks also to some of the unexpected allies from across the Atlantic, is nothing short of extraordinary. That now a debate has been started. It's starting to be based on evidence. And despite the world being very different, I think we all recognize the need to build. And we need also this whole approach of co-designing, now what we would like to actually do. And co-designing collaboration always comes with compromise to a certain extent. But it also comes at the beginning, I think, with the realization of what is the summit that we would like all to climb. We might not have all the gear at our disposal just yet, but we at least should have a discussion that this is the one place we would like to reach. And how to get there, how to measure the distance to get there, I mean, those are aspects that we are doing on the open heart. So it was mentioned, there's political momentum, there are shared concerns, but there are also strong initiatives already happening. The catalog is one of the examples, and we are very excited about this. But to be very, very open and honest as well, I think we have to also recognize the fact that there is still fragmentation around the movement. There are still trust gaps that we are all perceiving and also seeing in kind of the first coverage of what has been happening also since the report came out and since also the term was coined. And there's also a degree of coordination fatigue. It's difficult to get multi-stakeholder movements forward. Public-private collaborations are never easy. Incentives are aligned in a different fashion. Henceforth, I hope also today and also the discussions we'll have afterwards in the networking session will actually help guide us actually trying to realign these incentives to a certain extent. And I think this coalition of think tanks that will be, by the way, also widened in the coming weeks and months through also partners from the Netherlands, from Denmark, from Poland, I think is already a first step, and very happy to also have CEPS and the IA Society Institute here. I wanted to make one very last point is to underline that, of course, this identification of now priority sectors to concretize how certain parts of the stack can be filled with life are key, but also that whatever type of coordination mechanism we might use to concretize this should be very bold and would require radical collaboration with each other. And I don't think that an approach of a classic centralized brick and mortar approach of an international organization or a structure will be sufficient for the urgency and speed we have at our disposal right now. So it's really about thinking who's already out there doing that work and how can we coin a connective tissue of this movement, potentially by leveraging also collective action platforms and intelligence at our disposal to actually work on the same things. And I would like to also then basically formulate this invitation to everybody here in the room, listening online, but also to our panelists, to think alongside this afternoon, in the coming days, how could that look like? That we don't reinvent the wheel. How do we learn from initiatives that might have worked before? And how do we embark really on building this connective tissue? Because there are examples from other ecosystems. Sustainability transition is a big example. Renewable energy mechanisms 10 years ago are a good example where even with non-existing standards, even with not yet existing international cooperation institutions during that period, there was unbelievable advances of a new technology, also in context of very vested interests of an energy ecosystem that was basically fossil fuel based. And again, we should celebrate some of the achievements we have there because the world has changed there. And with this, I would like to thank you all very much for having taken the time today, having indulged in all of the points here. And I hope that you really feel empowered, but also celebratory that you are stakeholders. And now we have to figure out how to get our get together in Europe and enter into meaningful international collaborations, because this is not about isolationism, this is about giving something to the world. Thank you.